Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started and what are they doing to stay there? And today, oh my goodness, I have another special guest. Today, I'm getting to talk to Erica Austin. Erica, well, she's the Vice President of Human Resources at Contran Corporation. And Erica, I'm so excited to have you on the show. How you doing?
Hi, Bruce. I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're welcome. And I always like to kind of start the show with when I met my guests or when they kind of came into my path. And for you, I got introduced to you by another mutual friend, Lynn Stewart. Do you remember that?
Yes. Lynn is absolutely fabulous. I'm so glad she introduced us. She's everybody's biggest cheerleader, right?
She is
That's one of the
everybody's
best ways to
biggest
describe her.
cheerleader. Yeah. And I was so glad we got to have some coffee and talk a little bit about the podcast. And so I'm excited to have you on the show. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, before we get started, I would love for you to share a little bit about Contran Corporation and how you serve your customers.
Yes, yeah, Bruce, I can do that. So Contran Corporation, a lot of people probably haven't heard of. We are a private company, so we're a privately held financial holdings company, which is basically a fancy way of saying that we're a parent company to a lot of other subsidiary companies. Most of them are in the manufacturing space, so we have manufacturing facilities that are under our umbrella, so to speak, all across the globe. So we serve employees here in the U.S. as well as globally, and so it's a company that was started a while back by Harold Simmons. He was a Dallas businessman here in the area, so some people might be familiar with his name. And his daughter still operates it today. So it's a great hidden gem of a company to work for. It's a pleasure to get to be here.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. A lot of people probably hadn't heard of your company, and some may have. And I always appreciate when guests come on and share a little bit about their organization. I am really looking forward to talking leadership with you. Before we do that, I would love for you to share like the Erica Austin story. Like, where did you grow up, and how in the world did you get into HR and leadership?
That's a great question, Bruce. So I actually grew up here in Dallas. Let's
Hmm.
start there. Let's start with my childhood in the suburb here. Went to school in Mesquite, Texas, so just east of the city. After that, I went off to Austin for my college career. So I went to the University of Texas. So hook 'em
Hmm.
horns on that
Okay.
one.
All right. Love it. Love it.
Loved my experience there that I actually stayed in Austin for a bit after. But at UT, I was in the College of Communication. I actually got my degree in advertising with a specialty in digital media. So I was part of their Texas media program there, which I share that because I think a lot of what I learned in that program is actually what pivoted into HR. So in the digital media program there, we learned a lot about what drives a person, what influences their behaviors, their decisions, things of that nature. And it's interesting, although we learned it in an advertising context, right, to get them to buy products, getting them to do things within the workplace also still leans on some of those insights as well. So it's been a journey to get to HR. I feel like whenever I talk to others, I often say, are you like me? HR chose you. You didn't choose HR, because that's kind of how I feel like I ended up here. So after college, I stayed in advertising. I took a role as an account coordinator at an advertising agency, and really loved it. But at the same time said, I don't know. I don't know if this is for me
Mhm.
long term. And a friend of mine had done an internship program with Target in the HR area and was like, I really think you'd be great at this.
Mhm.
And kind of the rest is history at that point. I joined Target, worked in HR for them for a while, and then made a few other career moves before coming here to Contran. So I joined Contran about 6 years ago. And in 6 years, I've had 6 different titles with the company,
Mhm.
which is rare here and kind of unheard of prior to me. But it's been an amazing journey. As I said earlier, I wouldn't change any of it. I've loved every second of it. I've gotten to build a lot of the culture that is Contran today and a lot of the philanthropic efforts we do in the Contran Cares program that we've established here. And so it's been a ride, but that's how I got here.
I love that. First of all, I love when you talk about how your friend says you'll be great in HR. Like, I wonder what it was that she like. What was it about you that she saw that thought you'd be great? Is it because you're a people person? What was it?
Yeah, so I honestly think she was leaning back on we were in a non-Greek sorority together at UT.
Hmm.
And so I was the president of that organization. And I often held that title, I feel like, in organizations. I usually hate tooting my own horn, but there's a good opportunity for it. But I think a lot of those skills transfer to HR rights.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's like herding cats, but to a certain extent it is. And
Hmm.
so I
Right.
think a lot of what she saw me do through the organization was what transferred over. She's also a great friend of mine still today. I just saw her this weekend, and so I think that was a big part of it. But then I do also think, I don't love the term people's person, but I do think that I am. I enjoy being around people. I thrive
Mhm.
off of it. I enjoy helping other people become a better version of themselves,
Mm.
and how I can support them through that. So I think that genuine care is something that she felt, and thankfully she did, and kind of was like, "You should try this." And I'm
Mm.
glad I listened. I'm a woman of faith that believes, things happen for a reason, and so I took the jump,
Oh,
and I'm glad I did.
I love that. I love all of that. I do want to talk a little bit, dive a little bit into mentors, but before I do, you mentioned you've had 6 titles in 6 years
Yeah.
since you've been there. So I'm just curious, and for people who are listening, I know there's people like they're taking notes right now. They're like, "Oh my goodness! All right." So these 6 titles, I'm curious, like, where is it because you're in a growth oriented company? Is it because you were willing to go sideways, up, down, all around? What's that been like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, no, we're not really a growth driven organization. We're relatively flat, actually, which is what
Mhm.
makes mine such a rare occurrence here. I came in as an HR generalist 6 years ago. So, I took the job because I saw an opportunity.
Mm.
I've always been all about finding a place where I can make an impact. Didn't matter what
Mm.
my title was, it didn't matter what they asked me to do. Like, I was just going to be willing to do it because I feel like that was what was going to make the greatest impact for our employees. We're here to serve them at the end of the day. They are our
Mm.
customers. So joining at that level, I was given a lot of opportunity, and I always tell people, take it. Take it when you're given it.
Mm.
Put in the work.
Mm.
Don't expect it. Don't expect for that same situation to happen to you, because I didn't expect it at all. If you had asked me 6 years ago, Bruce, if you had told me you're going to be the vice president of human resources in 6 years, I probably would have just laughed and said, I don't know about
Right.
that.
I just
Um,
started as a generalist. What are you talking about? Right?
yeah. So
Mm.
I mean, I really do think if you put in the work, if you're willing to
Yeah.
do it all, if you pick up the pieces, whatever those are for the organization, and serve people, and your heart is there, then I think a lot of the other things will fall into place.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
love you use the word opportunity and impact. Hey, you mentioned your friend it said, "Hey, come over and check this out. This is a great world." I always like to talk about mentors. Like,
Hmm.
here you are, you're a vice president of human resources, but you didn't start there. And I always like to, I feel like there's a common thread whenever I'm talking to high performers in the workplace. And they're like, "Hey, you know what? I've had people that have helped me get to where I am today." Share a little bit about maybe some people that have helped you along the way, and what was it about them that was helpful?
Yes. So there's two in particular, from a professional standpoint, and then one personal that have really, really guided me in my
Mhm.
career. So one of them is who we spoke about earlier. She introduced the two of us, is Lynn Stewart. So I actually met her just 6 years ago. And all the things I was just talking about too, of like, go out there and do it, is a lot of what she told me in my one-on-one meeting with her. She was like, you've got to put in the work. And when you do, you're going to
Mm.
be sitting in a big seat one day. And I'll never forget that she told me, once you have the confidence behind yourself that she already had in me, then you'll be in the chair that you want to be in.
Mm.
And I feel like that's been such a growth opportunity for me, is to be confident, be willing to brag about myself. I'm not naturally that person. So
Mhm.
once I was confident enough to be able to do that and to say, hey, you know what? I earned this seat. I earned this spot. I put in the work. Then I feel like I was able to get here and get to this position. So I'll never forget those words she shared with me. And she's,
Mhm.
again, been the best cheerleader since. Another person was during my time at Target. His name is Brad Taylor, and he's now the SVP of operations for all of Target. But at the time, he was an HR group leader here in Dallas. And he was constantly cheering us on, telling us, this is what our role is in the organization, and this is just what we're going to do. And it was just such a powerful leadership style that I appreciated it. But the one piece of advice he said, or that shared with me, and it stuck with me since, I actually have one to show you, but is that HR people are like swans.
Oh, and those of you, by the way, those of you that are listening right now, Erica is holding up a swan. I love that. Okay.
So the reason is that we are beautiful and gliding on the surface, but we're paddling hard under the water to make things
Oh.
happen. And I keep this on my desk as a reminder of those wise words that Brad shared with me all those years ago. But to remind myself, we always have to make time for people. They are our customers. So when we come in here, when they come into our office, they can't feel like we're frazzled. They can't feel like, the world's on fire. They need to feel like we're here. We're ready. What do you need? People come into my office all the time and they say, do you have a minute? And my response to that is always, what do you need? Because it's not about whether I have a minute or not. It's about being present, being there for those people. So that was something huge that he taught me, and I'm still grateful to this day. And then the other mentor in my life is my husband, actually. So he owns his own business. He's been an entrepreneur since the day I met him, when we were just 18 years old. So we've been together for a while. And he has been extremely successful in his career, and he's who motivates me to continue to be successful. Those of us that are working moms out there, I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to this. Spouse support is so important, and so incredibly important, in order for us to be able to do both and do both well. And I think he's done a phenomenal job. And I look to him for advice. We sit around the dinner table and I'll be like, hey, I need to bounce something off of you, when it comes to work, all the time. And it's just an easy relationship. And so I'm very grateful for him.
I love that. I love all of that. I especially love whenever I have guests on the show and they share family members that are mentors to them, because I've talked about my brother before. I've talked about my wife. I met my wife, I was 18. So we've been together for a long time, but she has been a great, not just a mentor, but just a sounding board, support, and help me and create that confidence. I love how you use the word confidence as well. There's so much here. Oh my gosh, the swan. Are you kidding me? I'll remember that now forever. Like, just glide on the surface and you're paddling so hard underneath. I love that. Hey, let me ask you this. There's some people right now listening that are like, I am like resonating with this, is really impacting me a lot. How do you feel? Like, was there like a moment when you found, like, I always talk about finding your lane. I talk about purpose, but in relation to confidence, like, was there a moment when you felt like, hey, you know what? I'm where I'm where I want to be. I'm confident in what I'm doing, and I'm here to serve.
Yeah, so I honestly think it's tied to actually a personal event more than a career event. But in 2020, when I became a mom, so I
Okay.
have two kids under the age of 3. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old. So for listeners out there, you can't do it. You can get through it.
You can do it. I love that.
But when I had my son in 2020, and I, was getting ready for my first maternity leave, I remember my conversation with my boss, Patty, at the time, and she just had such a like, okay, Erica, we will get through this while you're gone, but we can't wait for you to come back. And those words, but then on top of just the coming back to the office and coming back to work in the middle of COVID, in the middle of a pandemic, and seeing, okay, if I have that level of confidence in myself at work and at home, then I can do a lot more than if I'm sitting there worried about what everybody else is thinking, or whether I can do it or not. So I think when I became a mom was when I said, I've earned a seat at the table, and not just my dinner table that I'm running the show on, but also the table here in the workplace. Because I think that that's a hurdle a lot of people have to overcome. And I I've thought about this well, in preparation for this podcast, Bruce. I'm like, what do I tell people as far as helping them get there? But it's one of those things where when it happens, but you've got to listen to it and you have to turn it on. Because I very well could have said, okay, there's no way I can do all of this, right? I just had a baby. There's a global pandemic happening. I'm going to work and dealing with that global pandemic. There's no way. Like there's so many voices in our head that are telling us we can't. So when that one comes through and says you can, you have to listen to it. You have to grab it. You have to grab onto that one to keep you going. And so, it's like people ask me all the time after having kids, do you intend to keep working, and are you gonna keep doing what you're doing? And yes, I am, because I love what I do, and I love the impact I get to make. And I think that because I do that, I get to go home and have an even better presence there too. But and it's a personal decision for everybody. But I think that's the moment for me, anyways,
Yeah.
that gave me all of that confidence.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with we just it's the way we talk to ourselves. And
Hmm.
you were surrounded by some great people and you saw the way they operated, and but it's the way you talk to yourself, like, hey, I can do this. I've earned this. And when you get to that certain point, now all of a sudden you're serving people in just a whole different way. And I
Hmm.
love that. I think a lot of people are they're looking for that lane, right? That gives
Hmm.
them, whether it's confidence or joy or whatever it is, they're looking to get to that. And I think a lot of times we find that by just being surrounded, right, by people who say things like, hey, we can't wait for you to come back. I love how Patty shared that. Like, so surrounding yourself with those believers and those dreamers, those people that just instill that in you. I love all that. Hey, I do want to talk leadership here. If somebody, we have so many different ways of defining leadership. And if
Hmm.
someone said, hey, Erica, what's leadership to you? Like, how would you respond to that?
So I would say leadership is all about inspiring others and not just directing.
Mm,
I've gotten the opportunity to work with many, many great leaders in each of my jobs here and previous positions. And the one thing that they have in common that makes them great leaders is the ability to inspire things,
mm,
to inspire me to want to do more. Right? I just mentioned Patty as well as somebody who was a cheerleader in my time here. But I think that at the end of the day, if we're not telling our teams, hey, go, like, run, let's come up with a great idea, don't
mm,
say this hasn't been done before so we can't do it. And that's a lot coming from me. We're an organization that we like to baby step into change. But I usually tell my team, like, if you have a great idea, let's talk about it. Like, let's make it happen. And how
mm,
can we make it happen? How do we find the yes instead of telling people no,
mm,
in what their ideas are and their thought process, or how do we just guide them to the thing that then we can say yes to. Um, but I think that if we inspire our teams and we give them that room for them to grow and to think outside the box, then a lot more can happen, and really amazing things can happen for an organization if we allow that room and that opportunity.
I'm inspired just listening here. I have chills as you share that, because I feel like I love how you said, how can we find the yes? I had Billy Wright. She is the Austin Sherm president, phenomenal leader on the
Yeah.
show last week. And she talked about it's something similar, but she goes around, tries to inspire by asking the question, what if? And she said it
Hmm.
changes the entire engagement whenever you're talking to someone and you're like, but what if? So by asking that question, what if? And so as you're
I
talking
love
about
that.
inspiring, I'm like, oh my gosh. And then it's like, hey, how do we find that? Yeah, that's so good. Hey, speaking of, we right now, I was when we were having coffee, I was talking about, I feel like right now the employee experience is probably one of the biggest topics. I mean, we're talking about a lot of different things, from, talent, finding talent, but the employee experience continue and customer experience just continues to be a key driver. Do you talk about that in your leadership meetings, the employee experience? And if so, what is it like? I don't know, for those listening, what are some things that you see that you say, hey, you know what? you're creating a great experience for employees, because I can see that because of what I'm seeing in the organization. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah. So, first off, I think for new, there's kind of different types of employee experience, right? There's new
Okay.
employees, and then there's tenured employees. That I'll kind of talk to those too. But
Okay.
whenever we're onboarding employees or bringing in new employees to the organization,
Mhm.
my goal is to always make them feel a sense of welcome and a sense of belonging. And I think that's because if someone feels welcomed and feels that warmth from day one from my team, right? I feel like that's our job. Then they're gonna want to be here, right? We want to be in we want to be in our home that's cozy and warm. So how do we make the
Mm.
workplace to feel similar to that? So so I think that's step one when you're onboarding a new employee. And then step two is it's hard to be the new person, right? It's hard
Mm.
to walk into a room where everybody knows everybody and then it's like, hi, I'm here.
Hmm.
And so it's how do we give them that sense of belonging, and what are things that we can make sure that we've set them up for success with their teams, with their managers, with meetings to meet people right away. Those types of things are important when we're bringing somebody on board for the first time. But then that sense of belonging, I like to translate over to our tenured employees. Constantly want to find new ways to grow their sense of belonging,
Mm.
and make them feel like they're part of a family. We try really hard to make sure that employees feel that, and feel like we care beyond just the employee. So I tell people all the time, a part of making people want to be here and belong here is treating them as a person first and an employee second.
Mm.
Because if we don't treat them as people and give them some grace when it comes to just being a person, then I think there's only so much that they're going to want to do for us as an employee.
Loved how you said, hey, there's actually two different types of experiences, because I was just thinking of the experience, but you're so right. Like a new person, I was just thinking the first time I went to a Dallas HR networking event, it was
Yes.
daunting. I knew nobody. There were 200 people there, and I was like, I just didn't feel like I belonged. Like first of
Yeah.
all, it was mindset, right? I had to get in the right mindset, but also to find those connections but then as a tenure, I'm kind of thinking kind of the same way in the organization. You have a lot of people that have been there for a long time, and it's easy for them to forget
Hmm.
why they were there.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
constantly reminding them. I would love for you to expand on that, like tenured. Like I hadn't heard of it phrased this way, Erica. Grow belonging. I didn't
Hmm.
think about it that way. It's like we just think of, hey, just a sense of belonging, but you already feel like you belong. Well, how do we grow that? So I don't know. For those that are listening right now, they probably have some people in the organization. They've been there for a long, long time. How do you remind them?
Well, and I think a lot of that comes down to like we as HR people have to identify these groups of people, right? We have to
Mm.
know who we're talking to and who we're talking about when we say these tenured employees. So I have a group of employees, for instance, who've been here, 15 to 25 years. Let's just talk about
Yeah.
that bucket of
Yeah.
people. They've been here a while. And so I know who they are. My team knows who they are. So we make sure that we check in with those people pretty regularly. It's not once a week. Let's not overwhelm them with, they don't want to hear
Mhm.
from us that regularly. It's maybe once a quarter, maybe twice a year, even, that we're just going and saying, like, hey, how are things? We're trying to make
Yeah.
sure that we are doing things that you enjoy. So is there anything we haven't thought of that maybe you would like to do? And it can be something so small. So I had an employee who has been with us, gosh, it's probably 15 years, maybe
Okay.
longer. I might be shorting
Okay.
her there, but we went to her and said, hey, what are some ideas we have as far as things we can do for culture or to get people involved? And she was like, that ping pong table downstairs in the park looks like a lot of fun. I'd love to get a group together on Thursdays and go, because I just
Mm.
love some exercise. And now she has like 6 people joining her for ping pong on a
That's
Thursday, like just because we made it a
fantastic.
thing. So it's like it's the smallest things,
Mm.
but it makes such a world of a
Yeah.
difference for someone like her when she wanted it. But if you ask, you have to listen, because
Mm.
that's probably our number one culprit, right? Is if you ask the question and you don't follow up or follow through, then you've just made it worse on yourself than when you started. So I always tell people, ask but listen, because you can't ask the question and leave it unanswered then.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, no question. We got to ask, but we've got to stay in the
Yeah.
moment. and listen, and then talk about it. I love that. Hey, speaking about some of the new employees, when we were talking before, we both talked about how it seems to me like the new, I don't know whether it's entry career or mid career, they have this hunger, like this
Mhm.
hunger for
Yeah.
professional development. Are you seeing that in your organization? And how do you what are you focused on when it comes to like development for your team?
Yes, so we're definitely seeing it as I don't know, I hate to use the word like generation, but as the next
Yeah,
generation
right,
comes into the workforce,
right.
is when we're really seeing it, right? Is that they want fast too. It's not just that they want development, they want it fast. So a couple things that we've worked on is we've worked on different levels of a leadership development program here so that we can cater it to different levels within the organization. In that way, people can get into that program faster rather than having to wait until they're actually in a leadership role because everybody can be a leader, right? And so that's one way we're doing it. Another thing that we've actually just recently had to kind of open up on, and in some organizations, I understand some listeners are probably like, well, but we've got a bunch of red tape creating, not allowing this to happen, but we don't. So we were able to create levels, job title levels, even that they're not necessarily changing roles, but they're developing in those roles.
Hmm.
And so we're trying to create depth of growth and not
Oh,
necessarily height and hierarchical growth. So that's what we've tried to do here to be able to cater to that. Now we're still learning, right? I feel like everybody's constantly
mm,
learning. It's all about asking other people for good ideas too. So every time I have like a unique situation, or I'm like, ooh, okay, I haven't had this yet before, reach out to your connections, reach out to people you know, um, use them as sounding boards. That way you can learn and grow together, and not just trying to come up with it on your own, because I think that's where some people maybe get stuck, is if they're just trying to come up with ideas in their own space. And right, I've been sitting in at Contran for 6 years, but someone who has a fresh set of eyes or fresh perspective might be able to give me a different and better idea. So
yeah,
got to be
yeah.
open to that too.
Oh, no, love that. Love all of that. I was actually listening. I'm listening to a book by Patty Azzarella called Rise, and she's
Uh-huh.
talking about development. And similar to what you're talking about, she's talking about how we need to focus on first of all, what do we want to do, right, in the organization? So it's kind of a two-way approach, right? The employee needs to know,
Hmm.
hey, what do I want to do? And then as soon as they find what they want to do, try to help them get to where they want to go, right? So if they want to be a department manager, how can we get them to see things through the department manager's lens and
Hmm.
and grow in that way? So it's Suzanne Myers was on the show one day and she said it's the easy hard stuff. And I've never forgot ever since she
Yeah,
said that. It's like it's so
that's a good
easy,
term.
but it's so hard, right? It's so hard to find the time. It's so hard to try to get everything aligned up. But I think the key is just knowing that in your organization you have development opportunities, and there's it's kind of like goes back to what you said earlier. It's all about opportunity and impact, and
Right.
trying to help people get there. Hey, you're like, okay, you mentioned you're a working mom, and I
Yeah.
noticed that one of the things I do enjoy about these interviews is I go into LinkedIn. Of course, I do my research, and you had a post. I wanted to, and I gave you some questions before the show, but I don't think I gave you this one. But I want to ask you your thoughts
Okay.
on this because there's probably some people listening right now that have little babies or little
Yes.
ones, and they're trying to balance their work life. You had a post that basically talked about working moms
Hmm.
and the demands of doing it all. But I think it all circled around trying to, if there's not like a support within their building, I guess, if you will, maybe it's
Hmm.
time to start a conversation. Talk a little bit about, like, first of all, how has it been for you? And for those listening, I don't know, maybe you can inspire them by some of the things from that post. Any thoughts?
Yes. So what I said at the beginning of that post, I believe, was, working moms don't talk enough about the pressure to do it all, and I'm going to use air
Yeah,
quotes
right.
for anyone that can see me, but what the power behind that statement, though, too, for working moms is we are in the driver's seat of defining all, right? We get to define what is all, because if you just say all, to anybody, that could
Mm,
mean a lot of things.
right.
But what does it mean to me? I think is the most important thing that working moms need to think about, is because there's a lot out there that can make you feel like you need to compare to others. If you're listening, I genuinely hope you're not comparing to me. Everybody
Mhm.
has their own journey and their own
Right.
experience. Some people probably think I'm crazy with a 6-month-old at home and doing what I do for work. But I love it. I thrive on activity. Okay. So
Mhm.
I know that about me. So I know that doing it all means being a great wife, being a great mom, and
Mm,
then being a great leader at work. And I
mm,
enjoy thoroughly all three of those buckets. And that might not be everybody's buckets, or it might be too big of a bucket for some people. And so they need to define it even smaller than that. But I think that we should talk about it. I'm in a unique seat that I feel like, being in a VP of HR role is exciting, and the ability to be able to have those conversations with moms that work for me is great. But then B, I'm in a younger generation than most that sit in a similar role than me, and I feel like I'm in a generation that's going to try to empower the women coming behind me
mm,
to talk about it. I have an extremely supportive CEO here at Contran that has told me, hey, I know you're a mom, and that is so important, and probably the most important aspect of your life. So I support it. I support you. I support
mm,
everything you're doing. So um, find that support. Find those people. Surround yourself with those people that are going to motivate you and help you to do it all, rather than hiding the fact that you're a mom. I had a conversation with an employee just last week, actually, after that
mm.
post. She saw that post and she came upstairs and she said, Erica, you inspired me. And I put up pictures of my kids in my office for the first time. And I said, what? And she was like, you have your kids all over your office. You are so excited to say you're a working mom. And I was like, yeah, because I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to do both and do both well. And so the second half of that post was about starting that conversation and talking to
Mhm.
people. And um, here in Lincoln Center in Dallas, we have a suite that's called Work and Mother, and it's for nursing moms. What's been so great about that is not just the suite itself, but it's been the team that works there. There and the other moms that I run into. Right, we spark conversation, and we're saying we're all going through the trenches together. I bumped into a girl a few weeks ago who had a 4-month-old, and I was like, "You got this. We're going to get through the regression. It's going to be great." And there's light at the end of the tunnel, and she was like, thank you, I needed that. And I was like, I promise. So I think that community needs to be a lot stronger, and we need to try to find new ways to strengthen it.
Isn't that cool? I mean, here you are, you're telling her, "Hey, we're gonna go on this journey together." You're not by yourself,
Yeah.
but yet your CEO was doing that to you too. "Hey, I
Hmm.
support that. I'm on this journey with you." And I think that's one of the things that I talk about all the time, the importance of surrounding yourself by
Hmm.
the right people. And you do that and just things just accelerate, don't they?
Yes, they really do. I mean, finding a group of people that you connect with,
Yeah.
finding connections within the HR community. You
Mm,
and I talked about this when we met for coffee as well, as the importance of that connection in that team. You can't do it alone. Don't try to. That's going to be a painful experience for anyone out there. Find people. You find your people that you can do it with professionally, because we obviously all have great support at home, and we're able, or most of us, the lucky ones, have support at home, but find the support in the work community and in the HR community. I'm excited. You and I talked about different ways for me to get more involved in Dallas HR, and I'm really
mhm.
excited for that. Anybody that wants to join me and come to networking events with me, come on, let's go.
Come
Let's not be the
on.
awkward person walking in for the first time by ourselves. Let's walk in awkwardly together, um,
I
so that we can find those connections for others too.
I love that. I'll put the link in the show notes if you do want to get involved. And of course, now you're getting involved with LLS, and I'm excited about. We'll be sharing more about that journey together. Hey, let me
Yeah.
ask you. Okay, you're like you're busy. You're busy at work. You're busy at home. You got this family. You got now. You're talking about volunteering. You're networking. Like, what drives you?
So I'm going to talk about somebody in particular, but it's a bigger population. So Lily is the daughter of one of the individuals that I work with here at Contran,
Okay.
and her mom works with me, and she constantly tells me, "Man, I go home and I tell Lily about you, and she's motivated. She wants to go do things. She's like, I want to grow up and be like Erica." And that is what motivates me, is
Mm,
being able to be a mentor for somebody, to be able to be somebody that's forged a path for young women that want to have careers and want to pour into that and find their lane and find where they're going to end up. Like, I want to help them. I want to motivate them. I want to inspire them. I want to be able to say, see, you can do it. Um, and I think that's so important to the next generation of women in the workforce, and making sure that we keep a strong presence out there. So that's my why. That's why I do what I do. That's what motivates me. I now have a daughter, and so thinking about that too is really exciting. And I want her to be like, yeah, that's my mom. I'm proud of her, and that's all that she does. And I look forward to that day, but I don't want to rush time because she is precious and little, and I want to keep her a baby forever. But
yes.
that's what keeps me going.
I love that. I love all that. I have chills as you're sharing that. It's like, because you said that's my why. And I think I want people to like write that down. What's your
Yeah.
why? Like that right there, you need to know what your why is, because that's really where it all starts. And I love that. I know there's people listening right now that are like, oh, I needed that. That is fantastic. And I love how you said that's what drives you. Because you all of a sudden you're like, hey, I have a way, I have an opportunity, a platform to do something
Mhm.
good, right? To give in a way. And a lot of people I may not even meet, right? They're just going to
Right.
hear the podcast, or they're going to see you in some way. And so, oh, this is so good. You've given some incredible advice. I told you that the time was going to fly by. But I do want to ask you this. Have you ever been given advice in your career? Maybe it's early career, or maybe it's even from a family member, but have you ever been given any advice that was just so good you find yourself sharing with others?
Yes. So it's actually from my mom, who constantly told me, put in the work, show up with a smile,
Mhm.
and great things will happen. Because it's a decision to not be happy, right? It's a
Mhm.
decision to wake up in the
Right.
morning. You can wake up and you can say, okay, I'm going to start this day. Everybody's given the same amount of hours in a day, and you can either do it with a smile or you can do it without one. And I prefer to do it with it. So I'm a big smiler. I am a happy person. I like to be that light for people in a lot of ways, and so I feel like I try to carry that into everything I do. And if I ever feel like something is not allowing me to smile and spread joy, then I don't do it. Then you've got to stop doing it. Those are the things that you've got to move on from. There are things we have to say no to in life and in our careers, and sometimes you have to say no to things because they're not pursuing that happiness for you and not giving you the joy that you need in order to make a good impact.
So there was I was recently sharing this. I was watching the ACM awards that were in Frisco, Texas,
Hmm.
last week. And Lainey Wilson won the female artist of the year. And as you're saying that, you're talking about putting in the work. She said at the very end, when she received her award, she said, if you're going to be a dreamer, then you better be a doer.
Hmm.
And it just like,
That's great.
it just stuck. I was like, that's the piece. Like, you still have to do the work. You can be given all these different opportunities, right?
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, you still got to put in the work, and you've definitely been putting in the work. I don't know how you do it, but you do it, and you're doing it quite well, balancing family life and work life. And we're going to move to it's time to accelerate. It's time of the show where I get to ask some fun questions. And first question I like to ask is, would you rather read a book or listen to a podcast?
So rather probably read a book, but I don't have time for that these days. So I'm all about podcasts. I have a long commute into the office, so I'm constantly listening to podcasts.
Love that. Love that. Or I should say maybe even listen to an Audible. I'm in a book club, and the people in the book club had all said, if it's not Audible, we don't want to read it. It's like,
I love a good book. There's something
I
about
love
like
that.
opening the
Yeah.
pages of it
Yeah.
that I truly love, but I am with
I
them.
love it.
I just can't these days, unfortunately. So
I
see, I
love
say
it.
no to certain things.
I love it. I always talk about great leaders or grateful leaders. What are you grateful for, Erica?
I am incredibly grateful for my family. They are the backbone of who I am as a person. My parents, my sister, my brother. I'm the youngest of three, and then my little family I've created. I am so grateful to God that I've been able to have such a loving family, and a supportive family. So that they they also motivate me and keep me doing all that I'm doing. So I'm grateful for them.
I always like to say my family motivates me too, but they also ground me. Like,
This
all
is true.
right,
They keep
stay
me
grounded
humble.
here. Don't forget where you came from. I love
True.
that. Hey, well, let me ask you this. Of course, we just mentioned earlier, you work a lot, you have a family, you volunteer.
Mhm.
What energizes you? What do you like to do outside of those things?
My husband and I enjoy traveling together.
Mm,
And so anytime we get the opportunity to sneak away, even we were just out of town this past weekend, just to have a moment to
mm,
breathe and then to
yeah.
recenter ourselves in our marriage too. I think that's important for people. But that energizes me. I mean, just being with him and being alone and having that
Mm,
time, I think is super important. But I also think that I am someone, I'm an extrovert. I'm energized by being around people. So I'm not one that like needs to sit by myself or re-energize that way. So I think part of why I'm able to do what I do is because going to events, networking events, talking to people also energizes me, and helps me find, the energy and the motivation to keep going, keep doing what I'm doing.
all right. Now I know why your friend said, "Hey, you need to be in HR."
You've come
That
around to it right there.
that's fantastic. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Hey, well, my final question, Erica, 10 years older, is around the corner and she's knocking at your door. What's she going to say to you?
I hope she'll say, "You did it.
Mm,
You did it." Because I mentioned, I feel like the listeners are probably thinking, "Wow, how is she doing it all?" Well, there are moments where I question myself, "Am I really doing it all?" And I'm in the thick of it, right? I have a 6-month-old at home, so it's not like it's all rainbows and butterflies, even though it might sound that way right now, to the listeners and in this podcast. But I hope that older Erica, 10 years older, says, "I'm proud of you.
mm,
You made it. You succeeded. You stayed present in what you were doing in the moment." And you were able to conquer it all, because I truly hope that that's what she's able to say. And I probably should have elaborated on the be present side, because I think too, as working parents, it's really hard for us to cut it off. But I'm
mm,
very direct with my team, and I say, okay, I am available all the way until I make it home, and then from 5:30 to 7:30, I am out of pocket. I don't have
mm.
my phone unless it's an emergency. Call me, because that's my time with my kids, and in order for me to be present there. And the same thing here, right? I'm not constantly talking to my caregivers or to the school to figure out, okay, is he okay? I try to say I've put them in great hands, and so now let's be present at work. So I hope I can make her proud. That's always
Yeah.
my goal.
I love that. I hope I can make my 10-year older self proud. That is so good. I love how you mentioned boundaries there, but I do, before I end here, I do want to just mention, you said something there that I think a lot of people are probably needed to hear too, and that is sometimes it's hard for you to do it all too, right? There are times
Hmm.
where you have doubt. Like, and I tell people all the time, we're all human,
Right.
and some, we're doing all these things and all these great things, but then we get in these moments to where, hey, we get in tough times too. We just work ourselves through that, right?
Right, right. You just got to be able to feel it, sit in it, and move on
Mm,
those moments. Whenever it's a moment when you're kind of just struggling, or when you're
yeah.
giving yourself negative self-talk. And I was actually taught that by a coworker of mine here, that was, she was like, you gotta feel it, sit in it, and move on. And I now say it all the time, because I'm like, yeah, you do. You've got to move on, and then you have to go back to those confident thoughts and make those the priority. Make sure those are the ones that are then catapulting you into the next task.
Feel it, sit in it, and move on.
Yep.
So good.
Oh,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
I
Erica,
love it.
this has been so good. You are such an inspiration. Hey, if someone heard you say something, maybe is around working moms, or maybe is around the employee experience, or they just want to follow you or connect with you, how's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn is the easiest way probably to connect with me and find me.
I'll put your information in the show notes. If you connect with Erica, be sure and let her know you heard her on Life in the Leadership Lane. Share something that you heard that maybe was impacting to you. That always makes the connection that much stronger when you're connecting. So, Erica, I appreciate you so much. You have again, you've been inspiring. You are doing some great things. I can't wait to see what's ahead for you. So thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Bruce. I really appreciate it. This was fun. So
Awesome.
thank
Okay.
you.
I'll talk to you later.
All right.